All right, what is up, guys? Welcome back to All Access, the Freaktography podcast. Here we are, episode 2. Episode 1 was very, very well received with our good friend Carlo Palozza. Here we are for episode 2, and there is nobody who is more deserving than an episode on this podcast than RiddimRyder. RiddimRyder and I go back to 2012. He's actually one of the very first people who I ever met in this hobby, and we became very fast friends. Guys, we've been to hell and back together. We've done psychiatric hospitals, we've done prisons, we've done power plants, we've done all kinds of overnight adventures in the craziest of places. There's no one in this hobby that I have more respect for. There's no one in this hobby who I have more great experiences than RiddimRyder. And anyone who knows us knows how far back we go and how much we've been through together. So guys, with all that said, let's get to it. RiddimRyder is on his way here. Here we go, episode number 2 with RiddimRyder.
Oh, hey there.
Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing, brother? You doing good?
What's up, brother?
This is awesome. This is a little bit different from the last time I did a podcast, so that's awesome. That's a real good way to come in and make a good entry.
I had to switch it up a bit for you there. Things are good, buddy. Going to my favorite spot right here. This is where I go after work for some downtime. I come up on the quad and do some goofy stuff.
That's awesome, man. So before we get started, the first question I have for you, and I can't really keep up, and I need you to sort of help me out here. Are we friends right now? Are we getting along right now? Or are we not talking right now? Because I can't really keep up.
We're friends. We're friends right now. There's what? How many times have we not been friends? Like seriously.
I think this is the third time.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So if I keep count right, yeah, I think we are friends again.
Yeah, so I think we're good. So that's all right. Awesome, brother. So we got a lot to talk about, you and me. We've been exploring together for years. Podcast number 2. First one was Carlo Palozza last week, so I couldn't be happier to have you here with us today. We got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to go through. This is going to be great. So why don't we start by telling us a little bit about you. Who is RiddimRyder, and how did you get started in the hobby of urban exploring?
All right. Well, I mean, ever since I was just a kid, I grew up in Mississauga, and there was always kind of development going on, so there's always be like that one random farmhouse in the middle of the field that was creepy. And I remember going with buddies and stuff when I was young on our bikes and just going in there and just nosing around. So it's always been something really, I don't know, just kind of like what you don't know yet. Back when we were younger, like you'd think it'd be like creepy or haunted and whatnot and scary. So you go in there and like pretend it was a murderer's place or whatever. So that's kind of how I grew up doing it. And then my dad's parents, they had a house in Streetsville and they sold that to a developer. And actually, when my dad and I went together and explored the house that he grew up in, so that was kind of a fun thing. So, yeah, it's always been for me. It's kind of like the unknown, and starting out with the abandoned houses, and of course, as the hobby grew to me, and I got more into it and realized there's networking in more than just in Ontario. You got the bigger places, you got the power plants and all the other industrial top secret locations, where they don't spill, the companies don't spill their secrets, but we get to go in there and kind of nose around and see what. How the sausage is made, right?
All right, yeah, and that's kind of like the same way I got started. We both kind of got started the same way. We did this as kids. We didn't know it was a thing, kind of followed the same path, and then we discovered this thing that these people do, and they put it on the internet, and then here we are. So you've discovered urban exploring as a hobby. You've got into it hardcore. You're right into it. You make yourself an online persona. You set your Facebook page. You join the forums. Now you got to come up with a name for yourself. And I know this question comes up a lot. Now, I know what it means, but I don't think a lot of other people know what it means. So you came up with the name RiddimRyder. So the big question that everybody has, UBJ, is what does RiddimRyder mean?
Rhythm is rhythm. So it's a Caribbean thing because way back in the day, I used to be I still am, but I spent a lot of time getting Caribbean music. I had a whole networking of people back in the Napster days and everything that followed up, the Soul Seeks, even like IRC, so Internet Relay Chat. And what I had all these friends in the Caribbean that would send me music and kind of like they get it right from the producers and stuff. And I just loved it so much. And you get this stuff. It was not even on the radio because this was so this is like the 90s kind of thing. And I just cataloged all that information in my head And if people could come ask me and say, what's the rhythm off this song? Like the rhythm would be, you could have, it's different than regular North America, I guess, other genres of music, because you'll have one beat, which is the rhythm or rhythm, and then you'll have all the different artists sing over that same rhythm. And so RiddimRyder kind of just like, I don't know, it just flowed through me. I knew it all. I understood it all. I knew the artists. I knew the rhythms. I knew the producers and everything. So I guess essentially, to put it, wrap it up, it's just about my vast knowledge at the time of the different Caribbean, like dance hall and reggae music. Like I remember, Sean Paul is a household name now. I remember when Sean Paul first came out back, in the mid '90s, and and then all of a sudden, boom, he blows up. So it's kind of where it came from. It was a big part of my life, and then exploring kind of took over the music aspect of my life.
All right, perfect. So now we have it. We heard it from the horse's mouth himself. Now we know what RiddimRyder means and where the name came from. So moving on to the next question. And I mean, we could go so many directions in this interview. We've both been together. We've been hanging out for almost 11 years. We've done so much cool stuff together. But one of the things that we've both done at the same time is we both made the move from just posting pictures online to YouTube. And it's been pretty successful for us both. We've both been pretty happy with it. And I mean, again, I know the whole story here because we both did it together at the exact same time. But for the listeners, talk to us a little bit about your decision to start a YouTube channel and start doing videos and not just photos. And how has that worked out for you, and how are you liking it so far?
Well, I mean, I dabbled in video a little bit before, but it's with my SLR, kind of just doing a little bit of stuff here and there. And it was kind of neat. It's neat because for me, I spent a lot of time building, editing my pictures and everything, just the same as you had. And, it was around the same time that, you introduced me to Carlo, and he was doing it. And I thought, I love documenting it, but it was just a lot of work at the time, it felt like. And I didn't really have the gear or the full understanding on how I wanted to put together something like that. Like anything I dabbled in before would have been, 30-second, very, very poor walkthrough of something, just quick and, nothing. It's just kind of like, what the heck is this? So, but, one thing is like the way I shoot, for example, like when I take pictures, I try to edit my pictures the way my eye sees it. So it's not necessarily, so it's just you know what I mean. So that's kind of why I kind of easily went into the video editing as well, because it's really what you see as you're walking through rather than what you choose to photograph. Because when I take a picture, I'm taking a picture that I think this is great, and there's so many different reasons why this is great. But the video kind of shows every little bit that may not be super interesting to me photographically, but it could be to the viewer. So that's kind of why, like, I wasn't excited to get into it. I kind of thought it was corny because there's the YouTubers, there's a lot of gimmicky stuff out there, and I'm not into all that gimmicky stuff. I mean, to each their own. I don't disrespect anybody for choosing their own thing, because it's exciting for some different ways than other. But the thing I didn't like about it that held me back originally was it just seemed there was too much stuff that just wasn't my vibe. I'm exploring. I'm not into ghost hunting and whatnot and treasure hunting and stuff. So I mean, that was a hurdle, but I overcame that, pretty quickly, because with the help of you and Carlo, because both of you kind of, we all kind of encouraged each other to get into it and, and help grow into it and kind of find our own little path and niche within the YouTube community.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like, the ghost thing, it's entertainment, and it works well for some of our friends who we were hanging out with at the time, or some of the guys who we still know now. But I tried it. I know you tried it. We even tried it together as a joke. And even when it's a joke and we know we're being funny about it, I just found it didn't work for us. And good for our friends who make that work. But for you and me, I just couldn't do it. And I know you couldn't either. So that's it. So speaking of making it work, you've got some pretty good YouTube videos that got some pretty good views going on here. So yeah, so looking at your YouTube videos, you've got 2 videos at 1.2 million views each. And let's talk a little bit about both of those. The first video that you've got, which is your most viewed at 1.2 million views, is the body stain house. And you and your wife, Zenning, were the first ones to find and explore that house. So you guys went in there not having a clue what you were about to find. And I know the story. I've read the story. I've heard it from you guys both. But for the listeners and for the viewers, take us through that experience of what that was like to enter that house and the shock that happened when you both walked into that body stain on the floor.
Yeah, so we went to this house. Like we had watched it kind of for a bit, and we knew there was the telltale signs about it. And when we got up to it, we actually stopped one day because it just didn't, we weren't too sure, and it's humming and hawing. And then one day we just took a stab at it, and it was actually in the winter time, so we couldn't pull up to the driveway. There was a big mound of snow blocking the driveway and everything. It was brutal weather. And then we got to the house, and we kind of looking inside like, holy crap, this is a good house. But because of the time of the year, there was like everything, the snow was kind of drifting up to the doors and froze everything shut. So I'm like, I got to get in here. So there was a door. So I just kept on. I spent about a half an hour trying to chip away the ice so we could actually open the door. Cause I think it was in February. So you get a bit of that, thaw, freeze. And then there's big chunks of ice. Finally opened it up and we're walking in. And it was literally like within seconds, cause you walk in the front door, to the right was the kitchen, just have a little bit of a court. To the right, the kitchen, then to the left is where that stain was. And actually Zay found it. She's like, holy crap. And we kind of just looked at it, and there was like some sort of like ribbon or something kind of strewn around, like some rainbow color ribbon and stuff. I don't know. It was like, but so it kind of you didn't really know what you're looking at, and it took a while to really grasp. And then once we figured it out, it was like, oh, what are we gonna do here? Like we actually spent a good 15 minutes or so contemplating our next move because it was pretty upsetting. Like it's like to see that kind of a stain, and it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in just 2 days. Like it's someone had been there for quite a long time. And that walker, by the way, I did not set that little hand thing. I didn't set that up. Like that was all that stuff was there. We didn't touch anything in that house, to be quite honest, because there was some pretty gross stuff in there in terms of just because it was infested with animals and all that, and obviously the body stain. But yeah, it was pretty shocking. And yeah, I remember like we when we left there, we didn't really know what to do, so we just went and found some random house just to get our minds off of it, and then we went home and we just talked about it because it's just such a weird thing to find. Like it's just such a scary and sad and tragic. Like you're flooded with emotions, to be quite honest. And like a lot of times we joke about stuff in this hobby and everything, but that was probably the most realist moment, in terms of just humanizing, I guess, an abandoned place.
Well, guys, we're going upstairs, and this is why I'm going to show you something that you've probably never seen before in a video. I've never come across it. I've always been worried about something like this happening, and then it did. When we walked in here, we took a few steps in the door, and we saw this on the ground. Now, for those who can't figure that, figure out what that is a body stain. And you can see right there, there's a walker. So unfortunately, it seems that the woman who had lived here had taken a bad fall, landed on the floor, and that's where she expired, unfortunately.
Yeah, so it was pretty sad, and I spent so much time trying to find any information without actually contacting like the township and whatnot, and I couldn't find anything. And, so yeah, so it was a tough one, especially because after doing the research, you couldn't find anybody. So it's like this person literally died alone.
Man, that's nuts. That's terrible. Crazy story. Thanks for sharing that with us. And I, for one, am glad that you guys were willing to share that one with the community and with the world so that we could see it and hear that story. And, unfortunately, we weren't able to get the history of this poor woman and how this happened. But you guys, you probably did a lot of elderlies a good service by reminding people to check in on their elderly loved ones. Now, let's move on to the next video, which is another video at 1.2 million views. And that is the abandoned 1980s time capsule house. Where did they go? So this house was crazy. I know you, me, and Zay did this one together. I remember getting in, calling you guys, and you were like half an hour away. You guys hauled ass and met me here. I sent you some pictures. Probably one of the craziest abandoned mansions that we have seen, and only a very select few people managed to get into this house before it was locked down. When it comes to this house, I have one question and one question only for you. Do you think we crossed the line?
Well, you know what? I've been by there fairly recently, and now I would say yeah. Because there's so much activity. Like the last probably half dozen times I've been by in the last couple of years, I was shocked at how much activity there was. And even kind of right afterwards. For the longest time, I was expecting an email, a phone call, a knock at the door. And like, the funny thing about that stupid video, because it was so epic, but my friggin' GoPro crapped out the commentary. I lost all audio. So when I finally got brave enough to edit it, I had to dub over it. So it's probably been several months. I probably did it like 4 or 5 times. By the time I actually nailed it, I had about 4 beers into me, so I was feeling pretty good and chatty and everything. But yeah, I was like, I can't believe this one got over 1 million views, because it was just like the worst dubbing and everything. But yeah, at the time it was sketchy, but I didn't think too much of it. But right now, seeing the activity, it's like, yeah, it's definitely. If we didn't cross it, we were definitely straddling the line.
Okay, so again, you've been at this for 12 years, maybe 13 years, and posting online. So you've been to, just like myself and others, hundreds, thousands of abandoned places over the years. So if you can, what are some of your favorite abandoned places that you've been? Maybe your top 2 favorite explores that you've done over the years.
Well, I gotta say, geez. I mean, I really like that asylum. I don't know. Am I supposed to name drop or anything? I don't know. But I guess it doesn't matter, because when Zay got her passport for the first time, we did a road trip down to Hudson, or to New York, I guess. And we did Hudson Valley Asylum. That one's been on my list for, like easy 10 plus years. And I mean, it's been burned, it's been, it's decayed to crap, but it's been one that it's just so massive, gothic, intimidating. It's got history for days. It's always been one that I've always loved. And it was only back in 2020 or 2021, I guess, when I actually, or 2020, maybe, I don't know, I can't remember. But anyhow, finally got to it after, knowing about it for so long. And then I guess another one would have probably been with you, was the first time we did JN. Because that was pretty epic. Like, we had done a few, things. Oh, you know what though? I just thought about something else. And that would have to be the Ford plant.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
The Ford plant would definitely be the top one. The thing is, I think I kind of diluted it for myself, because I would get bored and just go there, because it was like an hour house at the time. But yeah, that was that. Nothing's ever going to beat that first day that we found the open door and walked around, and just like, yeah. So that one, because that ticked all the boxes, and and it even had an epic story. So yeah.
Yo, for sure. Such a good story. Such an awesome experience. All right, man. So let's keep moving on. A big topic these days that I've been having in conversations with friends and online chatter is the topic of sitting on your shots and not posting right away, not sharing your locations right away, and just sort of sitting on it. And we're all guilty of hitting a spot, getting all excited, and then posting it like 2 days later. So where are you at on that in terms of, like, when you hit a spot, are you always going to sit on those shots and wait 6 months or a year? Or, are you posting, fairly recently after you've explored? It's a big topic these days. So where are you at on the topic of sitting on shot?
Well, with some places, if I find something really interesting, losing light there. There we go. Yeah, some places, if I find them really interesting and I know they'll get destroyed, it's more about protecting the location, and it's not about just hoarding it or anything like that. Like, I mean, a perfect example was Castle Village. We had done that one, 2 years ago, and we had met the neighbors right next door. They moved in. They got little kids and everything. So I'm like, I didn't want to post this one to get it that the onslaught of prey to people freaking out the neighbors and whatnot going on. That's more because and not knowing exactly what the state of that place was, kind of in limbo. It was up for sale, off sale, now obviously now it's sold, but that was kind of something where I just didn't want to post it. And the other thing is too, is like, yeah, I get the excitement of things. I know I'm guilty of it as well, but I found in the last couple of years that everybody in the hobby in the province will hit the same place and just oversaturate everything, like every little social media outlet. And so that kind of gotten me to the point where, number one, half the time I don't even want to go to places, because it's just like, what's the point? And number two, it's like, we don't need to oversaturate the audience with the same thing at the same time. You know, we can all work together, and it's not about it seems like there's a lot of like just, you know, dick wagging and stuff like that. Look at me kind of thing. Like, you know what, it is what it is. It's you know, and it kind of soured me in the whole hobby, to be quite honest, in terms of just locally, because I get that people are looking for something new to do, but it just was like, just wow, like the places get ruined, places get sealed so quickly now, and everybody's just trying to get there and post it to put their mark on it prior to anybody else. And that kind of like, so for me, I've kind of slowed down on even paying attention to what's going on around me and just focusing on my own thing, because you get frustrated and annoyed. You know, there's things where you sit on it for a minute and then someone else posts it, and next thing you know, it's like everywhere, and you can't control that. But you know, you can only control what you do and how you know, kind of deal with the situation. So for me, I try to stay neutral in all of it now, because I've been right up in the mix of things and the drama and all the crap. And I find life is just, there's too many real things to deal with. So I got to focus on why I got into this hobby and just do my own thing, and, you know, get back to why I did it, not rather than just trying to find the latest and greatest. Right.
Right. So now you just also touched on another point that I was going to ask you next is, and I know you have a very strong opinion on this one, and I'm excited to hear about it. And that's the state of the hobby since COVID-19, and how many people have come forward and joined the hobby since the pandemic started. And, you know, so tell us a little bit about your thoughts about the state of things these days.
Yeah, and you know, I can't blame the people that are curious and getting into it, but I mean, it's just, like I said, it's just so diluted and oversaturated with the same place over and over and over again. And you know, there was a time, and I don't think it was about protecting and hoarding or keeping it away from other people, but there was a bit of a time where people were kind of like, you know, let's just keep this one a little under wraps so that it can last, so that in 5 years from now we can revisit and see what it's like. But now it just seems, and you know, that's, maybe it's because there was a smaller group of people exploring compared to what there is today. Again, I don't fault people, because it's, you know, everybody's curious. They want to try something new or find something because they're bored. But I think the a lot of the ethics of this illegal hobby, but these so-called made-up ethics that we kind of do loosely follow, have kind of just disappeared per se. It's you know, and I think like the openly posting locations is just foolishness, because it's like I found, you know, in one of the areas, like the Toronto area, for example. I mean, that used to be shooting fish in a barrel. It was easy. You go down there, you're guaranteed like a dozen places in a day. Nowadays, things are locked up and like everything, because you got people going in there. There's police looking at you now and everything. So I find that you know, as much as like, I'm not a gatekeeper of the hobby, but I find that people are coming into it a little too reckless and not really understanding that there is a loose set of morals to follow, and to kind of keep the hobby fringe per se, because we don't want it in the limelight too much, because then it just gets ruined. So,
man, you know, there's probably, like, right now, there's a couple of people in the hobby who I've been trying to, you know, gently remind them, you don't have to post an exterior of a new location. And for Christ's sakes, don't post the location with the address very clearly on the front of the house. And also, don't tag the city. If you tag Mississauga in your Instagram post and you post a picture of the exterior and that exterior has the address, you've just given that location to everybody. And, you know, I tried giving these couple of guys a gentle nudge, and I was met with such hostility. Now I'm the ass for trying to help and give this advice that I was given, that you were given, that other people were given when we first started out. And we've all made the stupid mistakes. It's how you handle it when somebody else gives you that criticism. And these days, it's always met with hostility. Now I've been called apparently, I think I'm the god of exploring by telling these people to stop posting exteriors. This one guy actually went so far as to post a school, the exterior, the name of the school, in a Facebook group for the city that the school was in. And then just last week, because of that, a group of guys went into that school to go explore it. And within 5 minutes of getting in, the cops came in with K9, with tasers. They handcuffed them and they got charged. And this is 100% the fault of these guys that name dropped and clearly blew up this location online within 2 days of them going. And it just makes me sick, man. And anyways, I'm not going to get all worked up about this. It's a little late for that. But anyways, yeah, man, like I'm getting tired of being met with hostility. We've all been through it, and everybody makes these mistakes, and it's how you handle this criticism, or it's how you handle this information that's coming to you by guys like us that have been around for a while that, you know, that make a difference. But these guys, they're blacklisted as far as I'm concerned. I'm not giving them any locations ever again. And I don't care what they do or where they go, but they've now proven themselves just to be idiots that are blowing up spots for their own good.
Well, and the other thing too is that like they I don't know what the reasoning is, but they feel like it's hostility when you're just giving guidance, and then it's just they're just so mad about that they go and blatantly do the opposite of what you're suggesting. Because I know that like so many times I have exteriors and I just won't post them and everything. Like maybe when the place is gone or whatever. And it's you know, some people will think it's about, oh, it's elitistness and hoarding and whatnot. No, it's literally about protecting the place. Because I forget where it was, but it was just a couple weekends ago. I went to a few places. That stone porch house down in you know what I mean? But that one had the friggin' skates, the CCM house, I guess it is. The CCM skates. They were in the same place that I had opened up that box and put them 7 years ago. And that place doesn't look any different except for a bit of a cave-in. That's natural. So that's that's because it's so far away from the normal area, and it's kind of an old location that no one really cares about it now. So no one's rushing there. But I mean, like, wide open, no efforts to close it. And that's, you know, it's great to see that. But that's essentially what we're trying to do by guiding young people or the new to the hobby people. It's not about, oh, well, you got a big name, so you're just going to be a dink to me and be an elitist. No, dude, we got to where we are because people trust us because we make good decisions on how we manage and handle locations.
All right, let's have Urbex's story time now. You have a pretty good story about an experience a couple of years ago. You were exploring by yourself. You found a couple of abandoned houses on the same street. You pulled in, you parked your car, you started doing some exploring, and all of a sudden you got a guy driving his truck up the driveway. He blocks you in, and you're met with some serious hostility. Do you remember the one I'm talking about?
Do you want to hear about that one?
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's go.
If I pull down this random road, I see one side an old gray, sun-bleached house, cut grass, all beautiful around it. Right across the road, another one, even worse looking, but amazing, and not as kept, but no trespassing sign. So I hop out my car, go to the other one that was all kept and everything, kind of do a little walk around, feeling weary, just had vibes, go back to the car, and I guess to the road. On the other side of the road, because of no trespassing sign, simply took a picture. Next thing you know, a pickup truck from the house that's like right there whips up, and Buddy is furious. I mean, he's literally like an inch from my nose. I think I could feel his nose touching my nose. Like that was that close. And he's just at me. And I'm like, dude, I'm not doing anything, like, you know, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I seen you walk around that house. I'm like, well, I was just looking. Oh, there's no trespassing. But, well, there's none right there. And he freaked, and he's telling me, basically threatened me with putting me up in the trees with my car and stuff. So I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, Buddy, like, okay, whatever. So he takes a picture of me and all that stuff, and I'm just getting ready to go. And I look up the road, another friggin' pickup truck. Well, it's old Pappy coming down. He's even madder than the son. Apparently, this whole family had lived on this street, and I guess that was Grandma's house that I was taking a picture of, and then it was his auntie's house, the other one that I walked on the property and everything, but just freaking me out. And I thought, oh God, like I'm gonna get murdered here, because these are like the hills have eyes kind of people. And I'm just like, I thought for sure I was murdered. And he's like, well, I know the cops, so I'm gonna get the cops on you too. I'm like, okay. So I kind of was conflicted. Am I getting murdered or arrested? I didn't know. But the whole way home, I took back roads because I was afraid the OPP would find me on the highway.
All right, moving right along here. We got so much more to talk about. But one of the questions I like to ask all the guests on the podcast, and I'm going to keep tabs of who uses what gear, is our camera bags. And, you know, we've got video gear, we've got microphones, we've got flashlights, we have cameras, tripods, drones. We have so much bullshit we got to carry around with us on these explorers. So the question is for you, UBJ, what is in your camera bag?
I got my Canon. Oops, I just flipped you. Sorry. My Canon 60D. I guess I've had that forever. You know what? It's worked great for me. It's been awesome. My Coast rechargeable flashlight. Yeah. Of all the flashlights I've had in my life, and I'm not sponsored by Coast, but man, I wish I was. That is my favorite go-to flashlight. best beam, rechargeable. Second one I purchased, almost my third. I found it when I lost it the second time, but yeah. Then of course I've got my DJI Mavic Mini.
Yep.
Yeah, the Mavic Mini. The DJI Pocket, the little vlog camera. My lens, I guess, would be the 10 to 20 or 10 to 15. I forget which one it is, but that's like my go-to wide. I think that's really, toilet paper. Toilet paper. I never leave home without it.
Yeah.
And that's typically what's in my gear. I mean, depending on what I'm doing, if I'm doing light painting or anything like that, obviously I'll stock up a few more things. I've got a little toolkit for light painting brushes and all that stuff that I've got too. I haven't done as much lately, but yeah, so that's typically what I keep in my bag.
All right, moving on. When I was on the Chasing Bandos podcast with Greg Abandoned, we talked a lot about the importance of a good exploring partner and how important it is to have someone who you just merge with and you just get each other. And, I talked to Greg about you and I and how, when we explore together, I know when you're nervous, when I'm nervous. I know your limits, you know mine. And we also know when we can push each other a little bit farther. Like if I'm kind of like, I think we should go, where you can push me a little bit and vice versa. And we got that through experience, although we did get that together pretty quickly. It is very important to have that type of an exploring partner who you've got this cohesiveness with and this agreement, and you just know each other and what makes each other tick. And so you and I have that, and we probably still do. It's just been a while since we have been out together. But you, in the last several years, have been almost exclusively exploring with your wife, Zenning with Zay. And for everybody watching and listening, I am going to put her links down below. I do highly recommend you follow her as well. But you've been exploring with Zay pretty much exclusively over the last few years. So much so you even got married in an abandoned building. Do you have that same cohesiveness that you had with me that I'm talking about with Zay? I know she was exploring on her own before you guys met, and you guys now go to a lot of great places together. So I guess long story short, to get to the question is, do you find that you and Zay also have that same sort of cohesiveness with each other where what makes each other tick when you're exploring and you can really read each other?
Well, I remember when I was like, in the early days, I used to think I didn't want to explore with my wife. It was my own time. And yeah, I wanted to keep my relationship separate. And, in hindsight, I mean, that may have worked out because of the situation that I was in. I was happy to get away from it, from my regular life. And my hobby was kind of like my distraction or, like false reality. But I mean, well, going by what you're saying, like about the, having to understanding the bond to an extent to know each other, I find exploring with most of the people that I've explored with, I wouldn't say every single one, but a lot of them, if you do something big with a bit of risk, you can feel out that person right away, and vice versa in terms of getting a bond where it's almost like you don't have to speak. You just kind of like look at each other, make, gestures and whatnot. You know what each other's thinking. You finish each other's sentences, kind of thing. Like I find it's because your senses are super heightened already that you're easily picking up on what the other person's vibe is. So my wife, I mean, when I first started exploring with Zay, I mean, she knew what it was about. She was already exploring some pretty wicked places, and typically women aren't doing big things in the hobby, so it was like, okay, well, maybe it's just, a few hit and misses that I thought with her. And this is nothing against women in the hobby, but I'm just saying a lot of times they're just, it's somebody else is taking them there. Then I find out she's going to these places by herself. So I was pretty impressed. And then when I actually went out with her and, kind of got her vibe and everything, and, but the watching and the, just paying attention and just sounds and how you step and how you carry yourself in a place, I was impressed. And so I'd say right away, she's on the same wavelength that I was in terms of exploring. And that's the same kind of thing that we have here. You get it, what you guys are doing, you got each other's back, and like you're watching out for this and there, that, and all that. So I found right away I was able to get that bond with her, like I have with many other explorers, and it's kind of continued on. It's and being that it's my wife now, it kind of changed the perspective of things because I'm in a different place in my life right now where I'm better overall. And now it's like I'm not limited to do things that I used to be, where it's like you can't go exploring every week and you got to spend time with me. Which, you know what? Shit. Okay, let's go exploring then, babe. You know? No, don't get me wrong. Like the last couple of years, we've slowed down because we had a lot of things that we were doing in terms of, getting a dog, getting a house, buying a quad, and all sorts of stuff like that. Getting married, shit, I forgot
Right.
about
Yeah.
that too. But so there's been a lot of things going on, so we weren't always just exploring. We're doing a lot of downtime stuff too. But
Mhm.
our initial bond was through exploring. And it's not just that; it actually was. I was fortunate enough to have something beyond that between us, so we could develop this relationship that we are in now. So yeah, I think it's very important, and I'm very happy that my wife is on the same level as me in terms of the understanding and just the flow of the explore. We did like we did some pretty greasy stuff, or not greasy, but like sketchy stuff in the States. I
Yeah.
mean, I had New Jersey police contacting me about a place. So I mean,
Yeah.
we've done some high risk stuff together, and to get out of them alive, it's always good. So yeah,
All right. So over the years in your experience, you've explored by yourself, obviously, when you first got started. Then you and I hooked up, and we explored together all the time. We'd gone out with you and me, me and Carlo, in our nonsense exploring. We've gone out with way too many people on certain days out. Then you've gone to exploring with your wife, Zenning with Zay. So with all of those experiences of going from alone on one end of the scale all the way over to way too many people, and I don't think anybody would really take a offense to your answer here, depending on what it is. Do you have a preference to exploring alone, or with a partner, or with a bunch of people?
you know what? I love exploring alone, but I also like having a like-minded, solid explorer on the same vibes with me, because you get that little, like you said earlier on, you get that extra little push with, we know you go a little bit for, you're not quite done yet. I know you got a little bit more in so it's that, because like I said, your all your senses and everything are just firing on overdrive, so you may overthink stuff, and sometimes it just takes someone to say, hey, no, let's do this. Let's no go. Like you kind of make. Sometimes you get in the, when I'm by myself, I'm a classic overthinker at some things, and the next thing you know, I'm like freaking myself out over absolutely nothing. Oh, a car drove by. It's probably the cops. Oh my god, yeah, they're coming out. Like whereas where someone says no, it's nothing. Okay, let's go. Like it's not like it's a requirement, because I've certainly done big scary stuff by myself, but it is. I find it can help you kind of get over the anxiety and makes you can focus better on what you're actually doing, rather than just, if you do it, you're going to rush through scared or something. So I don't mind, another person, maybe two. It's not a big deal, but big groups, yeah, it doesn't really work. It's because you're tripping over yourself, and by yourself is not always, it can get boring too. I get tired talking to myself.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. All right. So, almost done here. If there's a young explorer out there who's looking to get into the hobby, get into urban exploring, maybe even start their own YouTube channel, someone who's out there looking for someone like you to give them advice, what advice would you give to the young explorer who's just getting started in the hobby or with YouTube?
Stay true to you. It's easy to hop on other people's vibes and stuff. It certainly doesn't hurt to kind of get, some ideas from other people and learn from what they do. But, try straight to, excuse me, try to stay true to yourself, and, make your own identity, because you can stand out from the crowd a lot better. Don't get caught up in petty crap. Remember, this is an illegal hobby. There's no true rules. There's no police for it. The police are doing the policing of crime, which our hobby essentially is. So
Right.
don't get caught up in the drama. Don't, be true to yourself, and certainly, reach out to others for advice. And when you get advice, take it, with a grain of salt. Don't necessarily just take it as an insult, but take it as, like, some people may insult you, but others, you just got to pick and choose what you're hearing and how you take it. Just don't take everything as insults.
Yeah, right. And I mean, we've all made the same mistakes. You've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And it's all about just trying to, help people along to not make the same mistakes that we did in the past, and to help hopefully make them a better explorer and a better, safer for themselves, and as a better explorer.
Absolutely. I've been caught up in the drama and I've been trying to, do something that I wasn't or whatever like that. And it's at the end of the day, you get exhausted from acting. Like this isn't my full-time gig,
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
enough stuff I got to do. And then, I always want to be me and have fun. That's what the hobby was about. So if you got into the hobby for fun, do it for fun, do it for those reasons. Don't do it for the money or whatever, or the potential monetization. Don't beg for that sort of stuff. Let it come to you naturally, because it will come. It's just persistence, hard work, and stay to it and stay real.
All right. So before we wrap up, do you have anything else you wanted to talk about? Did I miss anything? Did I forget to bring up anything important? Anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Well, you're really bad at climbing fences, and I haven't seen any fences climbing in a while. So I'm wondering if you've done any training on that, because there's been a few bad ones.
I'm going to have to get you to send me that video or that picture of that one time when I got stuck up on the fence and you just kept filming. All right, brother, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for joining the podcast. Happy to have you on. And make sure, everybody, you hit the links down below to follow RiddimRyder and Zenning with Zay on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, all over the place. Thanks a lot for being here, brother. Lots of great information, lots of great stories, a lot of laughs. And that's it for this episode. I hope you guys have liked it. UBJ RiddimRyder, thanks so much for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Peace out, guys. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time. Cheers.
So there you have it, guys. That was me and my good friend RiddimRyder. We have so much history together. He and I probably could have talked for hours. Hope you guys enjoyed the interview with RiddimRyder. All of his links are down below. I'll also put links down below for his wife, Zenning with Zay. Her links are going to be down below. They pretty much explore exclusively together these days, which, as RiddimRyder said, is not so much a bad thing. Now, RiddimRyder and I touched quite a bit on a very important topic for me, and that's the topic of a good exploring partner. I get asked by quite a few people if I want to get out and explore with them. I'm not a big fan of getting out with someone who I don't know or someone a friend can't vouch for. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And for me, looking for the right exploring partner, as I said, it entails things like trust and, being able to read each other. And while RiddimRyder and I, it took us a while to get to that point, we were pretty much on the same page from the beginning, and we did manage to develop a good sense of each other. So as I said in the last episode, guys, every episode, we're going to talk about the book, Access All Areas. This book is what has inspired the name of my podcast, All Access. The book is called Access All Areas, and it was written by a guy named Ninjalicious, also known as Jeff Chapman. He passed away of cancer, sadly, not long after the book was written and published, but he talks about a lot of stuff that are still highly relevant today. This book came out in 2005. Now being 2023, a lot of the stuff he says in this book are still extremely relevant. So I went through the book and I wanted to find some of the things he says about an exploring partner and things you should consider when looking for an exploring partner. So let's get right into it. All right, so today we're looking at page number 19. And again, if you ever want to read this book, which I highly recommend, there is a link in the description down below for the podcast to pick up this book and order it on Amazon. So on page 19, under the section for ethics, he says, when you're considering potential exploratory partners, try to enlist people who you know have firm consciences. Keep in mind that these people will not necessarily be your traditional goody-goodies. A lot of people who usually behave well do so because they're mindlessly obeying rules and laws, not because they're carefully considering which actions are helpful and right and which are harmful and wrong. Some people have the idea that urban explorers are generally troublemakers. On the contrary, I would say that urban explorers are generally better behaved, more considerate, and more polite than the vast majority of the population. So when you're enlisting fellow explorers, it's a good idea to avoid people who seem more excited by the opportunity to be naughty than by the opportunity to discover and appreciate some cool places. So if I could add a little bit to this, guys, I've been out with people in the past who are in it for different reasons, looking for things that they can steal, possibly vandalize. Those kinds of people I don't want to explore with. And to not get too much into the weeds on this one, through our experiences together, RiddimRyder and I basically learned each other's strengths and weaknesses. We knew when the other one was done. We knew when the other one wanted to keep going. When it came to getting caught, we knew when to run and we knew when to put our hands up and just go walk out and accept the loss.
And we never, ever put each other in a bad situation because the other one was being selfish. We just always knew. That's one of the great things about having a consistent exploring partner who you do everything with, whether it's a simple house or an automotive factory or a power plant or an overnight at a mental asylum. You get to the point where you guys just know each other. You know each other well. And my best advice out there is when it comes to an exploring partner, find someone who you trust, someone who you get along with inside and outside of the hobby, where you're basically like one person on an explore. All I'm trying to say here, guys, when it comes to picking an exploring partner, pick your partners wisely and you will both be better for it. Anyways, guys, I've had a lot to say in this episode. I got a lot on my mind, but it's time to wrap it up. This has been episode 2 of All Access, the Freaktography podcast. Episode 3 next week features Greg Abandon. He's currently living in China. He's the guy who runs the Chasing Bandos podcast. And he is the reason why I have a podcast, because it was people like you out there listening who recommended that I start my own podcast after hearing me talk to Greg Abandon on the Chasing Bandos podcast. So Greg and I are going to have a great 1 hour long conversation about how he started the podcast, why he got into exploring, some of his experiences, and he will touch upon a recent experience where he actually fell and almost died while exploring. So thanks to RiddimRyder. Thanks to you guys for being here. RiddimRyder links down below. Zenning with Zay links down below. All my links are down below. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Amazon Music, whatever the case. Make sure you subscribe to that podcast. And that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next week.